being a voice to people who feel like they don't have a voice.
The justice system is for people.
When I think about the field that you're in, I think about it being mainly like a male-dominated field.
Yeah, I will say that there are some times that, there's some bullying, and had an opposing counsel call me young lady. When I talk about people who don't have a voice, children are the number one people in our society who don't have a voice.
We're dealing with things like this. Yeah. So, that's very dark.
I think it starts at the very beginning of a child's life. I've gone after some pretty big, entities. Now I'd probably say more stronger. I can do this. I can take down this terrible company that is harming all of these people.
So you contribute 14 plus years of your life to becoming an attorney.
Yes.
Why?
Gosh, if you would have asked me that, I think at the outset, I don't know that I would have had a really good reason or known why I was jumping into it, so much as I wasn't really sure what to do with my life. And one day my mom said, "Hey, why don't you just go to law school? You like to argue." And so I said, "Okay, I'll give that a shot." But I think now looking back, I think so much of what I like about practicing law, what I like about my job is I like that so much of the legal system and is so it's just not transparent or accessible to people, and I think it's unnecessarily complicated, and people don't really feel like they can access it, in a way. And even we have clients, very intelligent, they have, advanced degrees. And if they don't have a law degree, they come to us and they have problems and, issues that come up in life. And, what do you do? And I like being the person who says, okay, I have the knowledge and I have the tools and I know how to help you.
Yes.
And I really like that because, and there's so many people who, they have issues that come up, and what do they do about it? And they feel very helpless. And I guess that's I like knowing that I can do something about it. And
yes.
and especially, people who feel like they don't have a voice anywhere in the system. And I think that's my favorite type of case to work on, is when it's somebody who says, well, I could file a lawsuit, or I could go report that and nobody would listen to me. And I like being the person that can just stop and say, well, I'll listen to you and let's try to figure this out. And here's what we're going to do. And so I would say that's been my favorite part of the past, 40. Well, it's actually now going to be 15 years. I have my 15-year law school reunion coming up soon. So, but I think that's been my favorite part of practicing law.
Yeah. One of the things you said there that caught my attention is being a voice to people who feel like they don't have a voice.
Yeah.
And another thing too is understanding kind of like the jargon that comes with, the job at hand for you. Mm-hmm. A lot of people get intimidated by that. I know I do.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the reason, or that's one of the factors why you feel like people don't have a voice when they are presented in these situations that are fortunate or unfortunate? Mm-hmm. And what do you mean by don't have a voice? Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think they feel like that they couldn't, I guess take action on their issue by themselves. And like you said, I think the legal jargon is definitely intimidating. I will say, I think that we've come a long way as a legal community. I think especially people in my generation have, kind of come along and, it's really, I think, getting more streamlined and more transparent and open for people to feel like they have access to justice. And there's more nonprofits. There's actually Arkansas, Association Access for Justice, where they help people who are in need and may not have the, financial resources to hire an attorney. So there's more organizations that are really focused on that. But I think, more and more, we are using less legalese and contracts. We're using less, legalese. And when we're in court, when we have jury trials now, I feel like we're being better about, really trying to make it, accessible for people to, understand and not, I guess, have it shrouded in this mystifying, way that people just feel like that they can't touch or get to, but the justice system is for people. That's the whole thing. That's what it's there to resolve issues and disputes, and it's supposed to be there to serve people. So it should really be, even more accessible and transparent than I think it is. But I think we are making grounds and making it that way.
I actually want to dive into that a little bit more too. When you said that, you kind of followed where my mind was going. How transparent do you feel like it is, and how healthy do you think our system is currently today?
Yeah. I think definitely, attorneys are really good about helping people and trying to help them kind of walk through it and understanding it. I think, I would say when I first started jumping into practicing law, I felt like there was kind of this very much old school method of, okay, give me your money and then I'll handle it. And you're just not going to hear from me until I've taken care of it. I don't think that's really, I'm not seeing that, in legal practice so much these days. Like I said, I think, there's just been more of a really push, especially on our ethics as an attorney. We have the rules of professional conduct that require us to stay in communication with our clients, update them, get them to approve or, get their input on every step that we're taking. And so I think there's more of a trend of really adhering to, which the rules of professional conduct have been around for a while, but I think really focusing on them and being, communicative with clients, or if you're, a government servant, if you're a prosecutor, public defender, I see now, I think that there is more openness and keeping people informed on their cases, and not, like I said, saying, give me your money and I'll take care of it. But you don't know what's going on, So,
absolutely.
I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. When thinking about this and coming into it for the very first time for you, everyone has their opinions on justice and what that looks like and what that means, even ethically, right?
Yeah.
Different ethic morals and values that people have. But for you, what was it that you saw that you wanted to try to make a change with?
Yeah,
when you first decided to make that step?
Yeah, I think a big part was, my first job out of law school, I was with a large law firm, and then I was a prosecutor, state and federal prosecutor, for several years, and then I went into private practice. And I think being willing to hear people out and take on the hard cases, I think that's one of the big things is being willing to take that extra step, pull at the thread a little bit, unravel, see where, things are, and being willing to really dive into a case and, I think being really diligent and working on a client's case and being willing to take, things that, like I said, may seem hard at the outset, but, just trying to dig in and I guess finding the truth and getting, I think reaching the most just outcome.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things I also want to ask you about is in my head, when I think about law, when I think about the field that you're in, I think about it being mainly like a male dominated field.
Yes.
You really see this in the movie that comes into mind right now, which I know it's not directly, but it's like Wolf of Wall Street. You have these alpha males who are very intimidating.
Yes.
Some of the most intimidating men that you would actually come into in your daily life. Yeah. And so with that being said, did you know that coming into this job? And then two, how do you navigate that? How have you navigated that for the past 15 years as a woman who's an attorney?
That's a really good question because I would say I did not know that starting off because when I went to law school, I would say half or maybe slightly more than half of our class were female. And I think from that you think, okay, this is pretty evenly split. But of course, that wasn't the case in, decades or generations before mine. And so when I got into, legal practice, I did find that, it is male dominated. And so I think a big thing is that helped kind of navigate that is having mentors. And so I'm really big on trying to, be mentors to other young women who are interested in legal fields. But, I would have, other women who I think would give us some, guidance. I can think of several, now I'm thinking about now, but having mentors kind of guide you. But I think also I had to learn that. And I feel like I didn't really learn this until more recently of feeling confident and comfortable enough in my skin to stand my ground and not feel like when they were because I will say that there are some times that, there's some bullying. I've been in a jury trial and had an opposing counsel call me young lady, in front of the jurors, and how you handle that. I've, kind of found, I was giving some advice to some students the other day, and I said, you don't get mad, you just win. So that's always been my philosophy is, I just keep my head down and do a good job, and I feel like I'm going to, come out on the top ultimately. But yeah, it is. I did feel like that was difficult, starting out, but I do feel like it's gotten better, I think kind of attitudes have shifted. And like I said, Sebastian County, one thing a lot of people don't know is, more than half of our judges in Sebastian County are female. And so we have a lot of women represented in our leadership and our legal community here. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. What does it look like for you to be comfortable in your own skin? What is that like when it comes to thinking about that in this exact, scenario? What does that look like for you?
I think definitely standing my ground and sticking to, what I know. And like if I'm, making an argument or I'm, to the court or negotiating a case with opposing counsel, just feeling comfortable enough to be able to, assert what I think and, in my position, and not feel like I have to back down from that or, be intimidated by it. And it took time, to learn that. And I'm sure a lot of, women in other professions, probably feel that way too. And that's why I think, mentorship is so important. Just teaching, people who are, coming up that, you don't have to deal with garbage, basically.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're a person who's in a position who has to make very difficult decisions.
Yeah.
And not only, talk about those, but argue those decisions. Yeah. So some of those decisions are very, very difficult, and they change people's lives forever.
Right.
If not most of them. How do you lay your head on a pillow at night and have peace after some of the decisions that you've been a part of helping make?
Yeah. I think of, I was a prosecutor for some years, but I've also have done some criminal defense as well. And I think, on the criminal defense perspective, I'm just thinking of, one case in particular where I got a phone call about representing a young man in a sexual assault case. And that, I was a prosecutor for so long, and I, had some hesitancy of, would I want to do this? And then, decided to kind of look more into the case and really realize, hey, there's some reasonable doubts here. He, may not have done, what he's charged of and what he could potentially go to prison for decades, And so, I think, we just kind of, dig into that. And I think the big thing is upholding the law and making sure the law is always followed. So, even when, you have someone who has reported, that they're a victim of a crime, their perspective has to be taken into account. At the same time, I think, when someone's charged with a crime, they have to be taken into account because they have constitutional rights, that it's important that they have a fair trial and that the state has to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, because how scary could it be that somebody could come and accuse any one of us of a serious crime and then we wind up in prison if the standards weren't really high. So I guess I look at it that way. I feel like maybe I just kind of rest back on the law. And I think as long as the law is being, followed and applied, that I sleep just fine at night then.
Yeah. I was looking at your resume, which thank you so much for providing that.
Yeah.
That helped me kind of with the show notes. Look, reading over your resume, I saw that you have actually found yourself in cases quite a bit that involve children. And, kind of protecting them and those types of things. So what does that mean to you, and how have you found yourself in those places so often? Yeah,
actually, it's interesting because I was practicing law for about 6 years before I had our oldest son, Will. And so when I started as a prosecutor in 2012, I didn't have children, but I did find myself, my very first jury trial was a child abuse case. And then actually, if I think about it, I think about all of my jury trials as a prosecutor for the state in Sebastian County were where children were victimized or there was domestic abuse of some kind. And I guess that means that I dug in on those, and I didn't want to, reach a plea deal of, maybe a lesser, lighter sentence. I think I did find that those are the cases that I dug in the most. And I think it's because, actually after I left the state prosecutor's office, I went to the U.S. Attorney's office, and then that's primarily what I did was I worked for the Project Safe Childhood division, and we, investigated and prosecuted, crimes against children for like online exploitation. And so I guess the reason I really gravitated to those cases and really, like I said, dug in on them is those are, when I talk about people who don't have a voice, children are the number one, people in our society who don't have a voice. And, what I, often would tell juries and jury selection is, these type of crimes, they don't happen out in the open. There's not going to be a video of it. There's not going to be eyewitness testimony. They happen behind closed doors. And, jurors are instructed in all jury trials, you can decide a case on direct evidence or circumstantial evidence. But, any kind of abuse cases against children, it's all circumstantial. But you do have the direct evidence of the child's testimony. And so that's hard, though, because, some of those children are young, or even, like I said, my first jury trial, the victim was 2 years old. And so we had to go off of, other circumstantial evidence of things that were, happening. So, I think they're hard. And I sometimes like, why do I want to do the harder cases? But I think it's, I think they really need somebody who's going to really push it and, really take a stand on them because, like I said, it's not something that happens out in the open. And, children, they unfortunately are easier to victimize because of that. And because, it's difficult for them to report it. And those are some other, considerations to take into. So, yeah.
Sometimes I'm not sure if you or anyone else can relate to this, but sometimes I play out these scenarios in my head where I'm observing something that's happening. And so in this case, I'm observing like a case where a kid has been victimized. And I'm imagining being that parent. And I do this in my head, I guess, sometime I'm not even trying. It just happens. I play this and I say, how would I react?
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine being able to react, even not being the kid's parent, in a way that wouldn't be mean back.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just so difficult to think about someone taking advantage of a child who is so innocent. And so you being in your position, and I'm a dad. You're a mom.
Yeah.
How do you do you separate that, and how do you go in having something that's concise, with a clear mind, and being able to separate your personal feelings of how frustrating that you're even dealing with something like this in the first place is to, okay, let's just make sure that we put the law first, and we make sure that this person gets, the proper precautions that are supposed to.
Yeah. I mean, I think a long time of training and experience, I guess, and, they always say, oh, you go to law school to learn how to think like a lawyer, and so I guess that's a big part of it is being able to really set aside those feelings, because I do have to, set aside them. It was difficult. When I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office and I was prosecuting child pornography cases and people who were, victimizing children online and exploiting them, I had our oldest son, and, I had a child, and I had to prosecute somebody for who at the time was producing child pornography and at the time involved a child around my son's age. And, that's hard. And I guess that's where the compartmentalization, kind of comes in a little bit, which is probably not great psychologically, but, you have to kind of do the job and stay, because at the same time, while I think when you're a prosecutor, you still have to, you have a higher obligation. Yeah, you're representing the state, but you have a higher obligation to make sure that the defendant's constitutional rights are being protected and that you are only pursuing it if you feel like you have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And so, it's not easy, though.
I mean, I just want to say thank you so much for being a person who has went through that training to be able to get proper justice for unfortunate situations like this. Because like I told you before, you were saying you're so impressed with the fact that, you look at all this.
I know,
it's like,
this is so technical. This is so impressive and so detailed.
But I was telling you, I look at and think about what you do, and I could never. I say that, but I know that, you know, hearing how you went through so much training and things down, but even saying what you just said got me so emotional just to think that that is the world that we live in. And a lot of times for me too, personally, you know, living in Arkansas, people are generally kind people.
Oh yeah.
You know, sometimes you do have someone who's being mean, but it's their actions that are being mean. It's not the entire person. I say rarely do I find a person in Arkansas who their whole being is a mean individual.
For sure. Yeah.
So to think that, you know, these aren't things that aren't close to home.
Right.
These are things that are happening because you've been in Arkansas your whole life.
Well, I grew up here. I went to college and law school here. And then we went to Memphis for a couple of years after law school, but then we came back. So I guess I've pretty much been in Arkansas except for a couple of years.
Yes. So a lot of those cases where you have been dealing with like child, like you have had cases with children. Have they been here? Or were they in Memphis? Or?
Here, yes. Okay. And so I will say, you know, it's prevalent here. You know, things that, you know, happen. I will say our local law enforcement here, and that's what you don't really get, you know, they don't get a lot of credit for it. It's not, you know, really, you know, in the news of how much they do. When I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I was on the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and it included so many agencies around here. So like Greenwood PD, Fort Smith Police Department, Sebastian County Sheriff, were all involved with Homeland Security, and they investigated a lot of, you know, any kind of, you know, child online exploitation cases. And so they do so much great work, and they brought down some really bad people. And so, you know, I wish they could get more credit than they do, because especially like the Fort Smith Police Department street crimes, they do a lot of undercover investigations, and they have caught some really terrible, you know, child predators. And a lot of people, you wouldn't think about this, but Homeland Security, the federal agency, you know, they're present here, and they do a lot of investigating it. And, you know, because since it's online, they have all those tools to be able to catch people. And so, yeah, they do such a great job. You brought up, you know, how can people do this, you know, do things like this? And, one thing I just really see a lot of is so much of it is, you know, cyclical. And, you know, when I did prosecute people for, you know, sexual abuse of children, there's usually, you know, an investigation into their background, especially in federal cases. They do a whole background before they're sentenced. They find out their whole background. A lot of them were sexually abused. And so that's what's really difficult about it is I think they themselves were abused, or they themselves were, you know, in bad situations, and then they go on to, you know, harm others. And that's the cycle of how do we stop that? Yeah, and I think about that a lot.
That's actually one of the things I wanted to ask you is if you were to take off your lawyer hat for just a moment and kind of speak with your heart and what you've observed, how do you think that we've gotten to a world that this is where we live in, to where, you know, we live in Fort Smith, Arkansas, Sebastian County, right? And we're dealing with things like this. So, I mean, that's very dark. Yeah. That's a very dark place to get to.
Yeah. You know, I would say I think it happens in a lot of communities, but that's where I think it's, like I said, I think our law enforcement has been really great in trying to, you know, just, you know, stop those type of things. But I would say, you know, one thing I have kind of really thought about is I think it starts at the very beginning of a child's life. And I know you interviewed Sarah Strong for the Fort Kids Children's Museum. I've had said, you know, kind of from the get-go, I see us having more educational resources for kids. I think you're never going to stop crime, but that's one of the ways I think that we can address it. I think if you get kids early on and you get them, you know, more access to education, opening up their world, more mentors. I'm so big on mentorship, but, you know, so I think Boys and Girls Club does a really great job with that. But just getting kids, I think, on a better trajectory, starting early, you know, that's you know, I hate to say it, but I think it just starts from the beginning. And at some point it becomes almost too late, you know, it's really hard to rehabilitate at some point, but.
I love to observe the way you think, you know, because I ask you a question like that, and then immediately you briefly touch on, well, yeah, that's a problem. But no, here's how we're going to fix the problem. And that's what you mainly focus. And I love, like, that's high level thinkers talk that way, speak that way. Is that something that you learned in law school? Or is that something
100%.
that, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. What is that? What does that journey look like? Kind of like switching. And did you even notice when you got to the point to where you're like, okay, every time I respond, whether it's in court or not, I'm able to think this way, and it's a new tool for you.
Yeah. I think a big thing is honing in on, I think we're trained to, what is the point? What do I need to, what's the message I need to get across here? Because so much of my job, since I do, trial work and litigation, and we do jury trials, I need to take those 12 people in front of me, and I need to convince them to think, to think a certain way and to look at the facts a certain way. And I guess that's what we're trained to do, and another part of our jobs, I do a lot of appellate work, so appeals. And when someone appeals a case, say maybe they didn't like what happened at the trial level, then it would go to appeal. Well, then when we do appeals, then we're not in front of a jury, we're in front of a panel of judges. So there may be, 3 judges sitting in front of you, and you're just standing at a podium and you're arguing your case, and they'll stop you and pepper you with questions. And you've got to, that's one thing that we're taught to do, is listen to the question and try to really, hear what they're asking and what, information they're, really wanting to know. And so,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was the journey as difficult as you thought it would be to get to where you are today?
I would say more than I thought.
How so?
I think I'm definitely a person who I make a decision and I just roll, and so I decided, okay, I'm going to go to law school and I'm going to do this. And I just, I liked it a lot, but I had no way. I don't have any lawyers in my family. I never knew any lawyers. I never went to court. I never had any access to the legal world at all. And like I said, I remember walking on campus at the U of A, and I told my mom I was majoring in communications at the time. And I was like, I really don't know. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And my mom just said, why don't you go to law school? And so that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to do political science. And they have legal classes, and I was interested in keeping up with like current events and all that. So I really enjoyed that major, but I had no way to know how hard the process was. You hear law school's hard, you hear the bar exam's hard, you hear practicing law is hard, but I guess it's one of those things that I just kind of, like I said, I duck my head down and I just decide to do it and just do it, But I think looking back, man, I was like, I don't know, it was hard, just kind of like I said, jumping into law school, and the first year is difficult. After that, it's not too bad. And I did really enjoy it. The bar exam is as bad as they say. It was, I said I lived like a hermit for a whole, summer, and all I did was study. You don't, leave your house for the whole summer that leading up to the bar exam. So, I would say it was harder.
That's not, wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all that.
Yeah.
Now we've entered into one of my favorite parts of the episode.
Okay.
And if you're still listening as a viewer, welcome to the second layer. This is a fun part where we kind of really get to peel back. We've talked through the first layer, what people see day to day, but now we're diving into almost the second layer of who you are as a person to the core. It's one of the reasons why I don't take, it's one of the reasons why I don't take two people, interview two people as often, because it's kind of harder to get to the second layer with another person in the room.
Okay.
So one of the first questions I have for you is, if you were, if I had been quietly watching your journey over the past 2 years, how would I describe the person who's sitting in front of me today?
Gosh, resilient, I'd say. Kind of just making it through. And I would say very determined, and I think a lot more comfortable in my skin too. Like we talked about when I started practicing law, you being young and female, and especially I was practicing in Memphis at the time, which it's everything that John Grisham, portrayed it to be. It's pretty cutthroat.
Well, if I knew you before, you got to the place to where you were comfortable in your skin.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who would you be at that moment? Who would I see you as then?
Back then, I would say, probably more unsure of myself and not as willing to kind of speak up and say, especially now, I know in my job, I'm not afraid to push the envelope when it needs to be done. I'm not afraid to pull back the curtain, especially if I have, cases where, I think that there's a lot of wrongdoing being done. And I'll tell you, it doesn't matter who the wrongdoer is to me. I've gone after some pretty big, entities and some have, brought down even. And I'm really proud of that because they were victimizing people that they thought they could victimize.
Yes.
And that, that just doesn't sit well with me. And I feel very proud of doing that. I don't know if I would have had the strength. I guess probably what I would say now, I'd probably say more stronger than I was back then and more sure of, I can do this. I can take down this terrible company that is, harming all of these people. I feel good about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would your daily life look different if money was no longer a concern?
Oh gosh, I'd have more time with horses for sure. So I grew up with horses, and I mean that's when I always tell my husband whenever I'm around horses, if I'm just like in jeans and mucking out stalls and even like stuff that like sounds nasty, I'm like washing out water troughs. Like I just feel more like myself when I'm around horses and just out and on the trail. I would say that's when I feel most like myself.
Is that something you grew up around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My grandfather, my mom's dad, he was just a true cowboy. He broke horses. And in fact, whenever he would break a horse, because I was small, I was always the first person on the horse that they, so he's like, it'll be fine, and he would just stick me up there. And so I'd kind of help him out. And, but yeah, so that was just a big part of my childhood. And so I guess I think people, you kind of cling to your childhood a little bit as an adult,
Yes.
I just feel like that's that part for me.
It's nostalgic.
So, yeah.
It's like remembering back when you didn't have the responsibilities of a lawyer.
Exactly.
Which I'm sure is definitely restful.
Yes. Yeah. So I would just be outside a whole lot more. That's one thing I don't like about my job. Oh, and I would say I would not dress up very much either. I also hate how you have to dress as a lawyer.
Yes.
So I would be a lot more casual and I would be outside more.
That's fine. If your soul had an age, what would it be and why?
Gosh, I probably have always been probably about 35. And so I'm going to be 40 this year. So I feel younger than I am now. But I think growing up, a lot of times I felt older, And I think...
Really?
I'm the oldest daughter of 4.
Okay.
And so, there's a lot of memes about that now, eldest daughter.
Yes.
I saw one the other day. It said, I'm an eldest daughter. I didn't have a childhood. I had an internship in raising a family. And so, so I've always been, I think, older than, and actually, my siblings were pretty far apart. So I, was a big part of, helping take care of my younger brothers. And so I guess I've always been kind of an old soul, but now I would say I'm a young soul. So I feel younger than I am.
When did that switch? At 35? Did it switch to where, okay, you feel your age and now going forward, you feel younger?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that could be. I don't know. Like I said, I'm going to be 40 in about, a few weeks.
Okay.
So I'm trying to just enjoy the last bit of my 30s.
Yeah. So, I am very curious to see what happens to me at that point.
I know.
Because, I definitely would say I feel older.
Yeah.
Probably around 35, 36 is how I've felt for maybe the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Going forward now, I still feel that way. So I'd be curious, what happens when I get to that point. 28 now, so still a baby.
Yeah, man. To be 28 again.
Oh my gosh. If you lost everything tomorrow, what's the first thing you do?
Gosh.
Go ride horses.
Probably go to church. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Go to church. I grew up Baptist, and then I met my husband in law school, and he asked me to go to mass with him for Easter while we were studying, and we couldn't go home for Easter. And I just fell in love with the Catholic faith, and I actually converted.
Yeah.
And when I guess I did it when we were engaged, and now I'm always say I'm the better Catholic than him because I serve as lector and Eucharistic minister at our church, and he, so I'm always telling him that we can't eat meat today.
That's actually a pretty high percentage of that's exactly how it typically goes. Like say for instance, if I've seen it in Jewish cultures, so if a person who marries a non-Jewish person, marries them, the person who they marry typically will become a more devoted Jew Jewish person than they are.
Yeah, I've heard of that too, especially because I know a lot of, women and men who converted to Catholicism, and us converts are the better Catholics. Yeah, so we're more serious about it, I guess.
You say you fell in love. What did you fall in love with?
Well, I think probably the same reason I like being a lawyer. I like the precision of it.
Okay.
No, I think what I really liked about it is when I didn't know or understand this until I started going to Catholic church, but so much of the emphasis on it is being a good person. I like the idea of that we don't know if we're going to heaven. We don't know who's going to heaven. All we can do is just be the best possible version of ourselves and have faith that when we follow God's will, that is enough to, get us there. And so I kind of like, maybe I'm just always a striver, I'm always like, I like the idea of working for something. And so I like that emphasis on it. I felt like there was such an emphasis on, you just got to work for it. And I think we should, I think we're here to serve God and not the other way around.
Yes, so, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's one thing you wish more people knew about you?
Well, I guess, so one thing a lot of people don't know is my parents were teenagers when they had me, and they got married right out of high school, which I think was more common, in the 80s. But they were teenagers when they had me, and we didn't have a lot growing up. We had like a little 2-bedroom house, and we, like I said, I grew up running around with horses and just in the country. And I guess I would say what people don't really know about me is I'm very much a country girl. And, so much of it, like you go to law school and, you really do have to kind of, like we talked about, mask your real true self. I guess that's why the second layer is good. But, we have to put ourselves aside because it's not about us, it's about our client. And we're kind of like a vehicle of arguing our client's case. And so, so much of my day is putting myself aside, and when I interact with people, I'm often as a lawyer. And so I have that persona, but I would say they probably don't know how country I am.
Yeah, that's so funny. I feel like there's so many people around here that I've met so far, whether it's big CEO or execs of whatever this company, and you look at their salary and you're like, oh my gosh, that's more than my lifetime I would probably bring in. But then you just you get to know them and you go to their farmhouse and you're like, oh, okay, this guy's just a country boy.
Yes,
at heart, that's really what the only thing that makes him different is my perception of how much different he is because of the amount of money he has. So who really has the problem here? Is it me, the way I perceive him? Is it, so I kind of start to think about that a lot of times too. It's just like a lot of people around here really are. We're all just similar. When you pull back the second layer, you find that we're all just very, very similar. And I'm more of that type of person to really try to humanize a person before I condemn them or really shame them in any sort of way if they're doing something that I don't agree with or anything like that. And I think that's like your job.
Yeah, it is actually. That's my job description. But that's what I really like about here. I'm from here. I'll be honest. If you had told me when I was in high school that I would be back here, I probably would have said, no, I'm going to Chicago, I'm going to New York, and I'm going to, live this fabulous life. And I never would have thought that I'd, come back and settle back in Fort Smith. And, and when we first kind of moved back here, we thought, well, maybe we might move back closer to Williams' family near, Nashville. But gosh, I can't even fathom leaving the people here. That's what I just love. I know you moved here too, right? So your wife is from here, right?
Yes.
And so I think you and I talked about this, before, but just the people here are so good, and I just think that is more unique than people here who are here realize that, like we are so good to each other. We have such good nonprofits, and we really care about each other. And I think the divisiveness that kind of characterizes our country as a whole, I don't feel that here. I think that we all really care about each other. We want, we want our community and others to do well and be okay. And I just think that's really cool. That's something that I think you can say about Fort Smith, that I don't think they have the cohesion like we do in Northwest Arkansas or, the Little Rock area. I think we're, I think we're a tighter knit community. It's a big, small town,
I think it takes people stepping outside of that bubble to realize that. As soon as our kids will be homeschooled, as far as we know now, we have young kids, so we have time.
Yes.
But whenever it comes to that moment where, they're deciding if they want to go to college or whatever. One of the things I'm really going to strongly motivate them to do is to just get outside of the town.
Yes,
whether you know you want to stay here or not, go see the world a little bit. And, if me as a father can do a really good job in my work, in my profession, to provide that opportunity for them to do that, because, they're coming out of high school. They're not really going to be able to do that on their own.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's one of the best ways you can set up a kid for success, especially here.
Yeah.
Because I find so often, this is the case with Lauren. It's definitely been a case with me leaving Arkansas and coming back.
Yeah.
You just don't realize how good you have it until you get somewhere where you don't have those amenities.
Right.
I go to Dallas, and yes, I have same day delivery on Amazon.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And I have everything I need within a 50-mile radius. Like literally everything I need, I can find in a 50-mile radius. Anything I want to do, I can do. But
the relationships.
Yeah. And that's why we came back, is for the people in the relationships.
Yeah, we were in Memphis, and I would say the same thing, is we were just kind of, we enjoyed it. We loved the Grizzlies. Like we'd go to the art museum. We did all the activities there and loved it. And I missed those, parts of it. But, I was lonely.
Yes.
Yeah. And I just, the friendships that we, made here, is a lot of my friends, now I didn't know them growing up, so I've made them as adults. But I think making friends as an adult here is really easy. It's a lot easier than in a big city.
Yes. And it's actually difficult to do in general as an adult,
Yes.
especially for women. I hear that around like 26, it's very unlikely that women are continuing to make more and more friends that they know.
I can see that.
They're friends. So yes.
That's why we're wanting to get Fort Kids built, so that parents have a place to converge.
Yes.
Yes.
What's one thing? Oh no, we already did that. So guess what we're doing?
Okay.
We're doing Would You Rather Arkansas edition.
Okay.
And this is going to be a lot of fun. This is kind of like a game segment where I ask you questions that are tailored around things in Arkansas, but also things specific to you. So there may be a question in here that's very, very specific to you.
All right.
And if you're in the audience, please play around as well. Audience comment section. If you're a viewer, just kind of comment those below. This would be fun. I'll go through and actually read every one of them. So first one we have.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. I was born ready.
Okay. Would you rather spend a weekend floating the Buffalo River or hiking through the Ozark National Forest?
I say hiking because I need more exercise. Although my son has been really into kayaking. He got that from the Nature Center here. And so we got him a kayak for his birthday last summer. And so now we're starting to get more kind of into that too. But I love hiking. And so I just like I said, I like being outside. So need the exercise. I'll go with that.
Yeah, that's fun. A lot of people don't realize how cool the nature. You said the Nature Center. Yes. I just went and did a tour recently and did like an MTV Cribs type video for Discover Fort Smith, and they really offer so many cool things for not only kids, but they were inviting me to go in. And they're like, you can come do this on Saturday. This is not only for kids. Yeah. Whether it's like kayaking, canoeing. I want to say they had archery in the basement. Yeah. It's so cool down there, fishing. Yeah. There's all different types of things. And the best thing about it is it's free. Yes. Like it's all free. Yep. So if you don't know if you want to get into kayaking or any of these other things yet, you can go there.
They have the short hiking trails. They're not big commitments.
Yeah. They'll teach you how to do them, and you're able to get access to that gear for free before you decide to buy it on your own. Yeah. It's super cool. Yeah. Not to interrupt the segment, but I wanted to throw in that, we'll have our family. William's not from here. And so my sister-in-law and her husband live in the Chattanooga area. So it's a pretty big city. It's bigger than Fort Smith, but they'll come visit us every year around 4th of July. And people say, oh, there's nothing to do here. But they love all the stuff. They love Parrot Island. They love the Nature Center. We took them there and we spent almost a whole day kayaking, and they love the Marshall's Museum, and the kids love doing the scavenger hunt. So I'm like, there's stuff to do here, people. I'll just say that. Okay. So next question. Okay. Would you rather argue a case in front of Judge Isaac Parker back in the 1800s, or defend yourself in a modern day debate at the Arkansas State Capitol? That's a very specific question. Also interesting. I would say the Capitol, because I wouldn't want Judge Parker to decide that, he's the hanging judge, I'm like, you never know what would happen there. So I think I'll just defend myself at the Capitol in modern times. He might also say, what is this female doing here as an attorney? Yeah, yeah. So. Do you know when the first female attorney... Oh, no, but I'm going to look that up after this, because I should know that. That's a really good question. When the first female attorney was barred. Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, next question.
Okay.
Would you rather live in historic downtown lofts in Little Rock or in a cabin in Ouachita Mountains with no cell service?
Oh, definitely the cabin. Yeah, I would be fine without cell service. I would be just fine. Like, leave me alone, people.
I'll tell you what, you'll get a lot of hiking done there for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and horseback riding.
And you'll probably have more space available for less money.
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now we are to the end.
Okay.
Thank you so much for
Yeah,
coming. I want to
you.
ask you to share how people can connect with you at all.
Yeah.
And then also if you have anything you would like to announce as well.
Okay. Well, I guess you can find me. Our website for the Buckley Firm is buckleyfirm.org. And then we also have a Facebook page. I need to be better about uploading that, but I also have a personal Facebook page. So I would love more friend, requests. So I've definitely posted a lot of pictures of my kids and everything there. So, but yeah, I don't know. I guess that's, kind of it. But I would say, one thing I did, I will throw out there is I mentioned, the importance of mentorships. And I would say if I can give, just a pitch to our community of, I think that's something really important, whatever field you're in, taking the time to, try to help somebody who is interested in getting started. My husband and I, when we were in Memphis, we coached a high school mock trial team and we loved doing it. We met on the mock trial team in Fayetteville. That's how we started dating. And so that's where you learn your trial skills and you compete in a tournament. And so when you came back here, we were just recently asked to help the Southside team. There was a young man on the team who really wants to be a lawyer, and he did what he had to do to try to get a team together, and they needed some coaches. And so we got in there. We realized, man, these kids are good. We're like, wow, the future for the legal profession is bright, because I would probably trust them to represent me more than honestly some adults maybe. But, so we just really enjoyed that. That's been such a good experience. So I would say, anybody who has that, opportunity, take it, because I think we're as good as our next generation. So
that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on again. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. It was good to talk to you.
Yes, you as well.
Yeah.